Hey, did you know that TGSTS is on YouTube and Instagram? We'd love to hear your episode suggestions or just chat with you about life. So find us at hashtag TGSTS and follow, like, subscribe, comment, and share. Thank you. Cheers.
Yeah, I think generally it's something that people have known was going to happen for a long time, but maybe they just wake up one day and they're like, I'm ready for whatever reason. And that
Yeah.
could be, they found a text, someone took
Hey.
some money, went into more debt without talking to them. Or they're just like, I want to live my best life and I'm only getting older. My kids are grown and I'm just not going to deal with you anymore.
Hey Mo, how are you?
I'm good. Hey,
Good.
Em.
Hi, I'm giddy.
I'm giddy because we have a special guest.
I know, me too. I'm excited.
Who do we?
Who do we have? My friend, Kelly Price. She's a divorce attorney or a family law attorney out of California. And we haven't talked in a while, so I'm really excited to see her face and have her on here to give us some information. We're going to talk about divorce, Girlfriend's Guide to Divorce, I guess, like the show. So Kelly, welcome to
Thank you.
TGSTS. Yay! Do you
I'm
want to tell
excited to
everybody
be
a
here.
little bit? Yeah, a little bit about who you are or how we know each other or whatever you want to say.
Sure. So, my name is Kelly Price, like you said, and I am your friend from law school. We met in law school, and I've been a divorce attorney or family law attorney for 12 years now.
Yay.
And I only do family law. So, this is my jam. This is what I love to do. And I'm a certified specialist licensed in California. So, just here to chat about divorce, the do's, the don'ts, the crazy stories, all the good
Yes.
things.
Yay. I thought this was like a good idea too, because I was saying earlier, like our podcast is all about like midlife awakenings, changes that happen when you hit like your late 30s, 40s, 50s. And right now, like just in my life, like the school moms and all that kind of stuff, like there's at least 4 divorces that I know of.
Oh, yeah.
One that hasn't been served yet, so 5. And it's like I feel like I'm hearing a lot about it, and I think it would be a great service or help to kind of let people know, like, hey, like this is what the process is. This is what you do, like the important things. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, and then some funny stories if you have any, because
And it's pretty prevalent, like in the school mom life, to learn about the divorces. And I've even gotten a few clients that way, which is kind of good and weird at the same time.
But yeah, well, I mean,
But
because moms talk, right? And so
mhm.
like you're talking and you're hearing everybody's. I know everybody's business about their marriages, and I'm just like, oof. And so I
It's
just want to make
wild.
sure everybody's doing what they're supposed to do. So like, what do you do? Like, what if you okay? So you wake up and you're like, I'm not feeling this anymore.
Is
Sure.
that what happens? Is that
Yeah, is
what
that like
happens? What all of a sudden, all these people are now ready to get a divorce?
Yeah, I think generally it's something that people have known was going to happen for a long time, but maybe they just wake up one day and they're like, I'm ready for whatever reason. And that
yeah?
could be, they found a text, someone took
Hey.
some money, went into more debt without talking to them. Or they're just like, I want to live my best life and I'm only getting older. My kids are grown and I'm just not going to deal with you anymore.
Damn.
So I think it's a plethora of things.
Hmm.
Yeah. I always wonder about that when I hear about people who are like 60 and get divorced. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what? You've been married for like 30 years or whatever. And then all of a sudden they're just like, no more. And I'm like, what
So they
happened
call
there?
those, yeah, they call those like gray divorces, and there's actually a lot of them. I even had a client last year, sweet man, he was like in his 80s, and I just feel like I'm tired. Like I probably wouldn't want to do that in my 80s, but I guess, when it's a second marriage or a third marriage and you have children from prior marriages and you're starting to think about your demise and what's going to be left to your family, you want to make sure that your kids are protected. And I think
uh,
for older people that get divorced, that's probably one of the big motivators.
is there like inheritance and like the money they leave behind, their all
Yes.
that kind of stuff? Oh,
Yeah. Hmm.
okay. So say I've decided, I'm not me, but like say you're, oh, okay. First of all, who files for divorce more frequently? Is it men or women? Or are you seeing like a mix or is there like a trend
Um,
there?
would say it's probably more women, but I think that's
Mm.
just because men are like, we don't want to be litigious. We don't want to have lawyers involved. We just want to work this out. Whereas women, they hire attorneys, I think, a little bit more often.
Mhm.
And most times, the women are the ones that don't know a lot about the finances. They're stay-at-home moms. And so they need that help. Whereas men are just like, well, I'm not going to pay someone to help me. Um, so I'd say women file more often than men do.
And what's the
So
reason? What's the most common reason?
cheating probably in
Yeah.
this day and age. I think with apps and Instagram, Snapchat, all the socials, emotional cheating is a lot
Mhm.
more happening often, unfortunately. And I would say money too. Everyone that comes through my office usually has a lot of debt. They don't have great financial choices. Um, I see most of the time they have separate accounts. They don't have any joint accounts. So it's like there
Dang.
wasn't that transparency. Yeah, there's just a lot of trends that I see. I would always recommend, obviously, full transparency in your marriage. Like you need to have access to all of your accounts. You need to be on the accounts. You need to be on the home, be on the retirement accounts, all of
Yes.
those
Get your
things.
name on all. My name is on everything,
Yes.
girl.
And really know. Yeah, because it's
It's your
you know,
life.
yes. Embarrassingly enough, as a divorce attorney, having been married for almost 16 years, I think I just
Yay.
barely got on my husband's retirement as a beneficiary like
Say
last year. We just never
what?
did it. And
Yeah.
so, but finally I was like, okay, now, like this is, we're getting older, like you need to change this. But, do as I say, not as I do type of thing. But yeah, men and women, you need transparency with your spouse because otherwise, it's easier to get in the role of telling lies, having secrets, and then your communication is just shot, and then you end up in my office. So,
Yeah.
not a
Dang.
great place for people to be.
But it's good for you, right?
It is good for me. Yeah. I love what I do, so I love to help. And most of the time, I think people are always like, how do you do divorce? It's not, especially like being involved in a Christian school, it's not obviously what God wants people to do. But
Yeah.
people have already decided before they come to my office that they're done. So it's
Yeah.
never like we have to sort of like tell people, like, yes, we think you should file for divorce. They're already
That's not
there.
your role. And that's not your role, right?
Exactly.
Like you're not a
Exactly.
counselor. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dang.
So, yeah, I
So what's
know.
the first thing? So say you wake up in the morning, you're like, okay, I'm done. This is it.
Hmm.
Or you find out there's like a whole other family or whatever, whatever they got going on, whatever the drama is, you decide it's
Yeah.
done. What do you do?
So, like I said, I'm only licensed in California. So, in California, you would come see an attorney, or you could do it on your own. You really don't, you're not required to have an attorney. But I would say most people spend more time and effort trying to get divorced on their own than just if they
Mhm.
hired someone to help them.
Mhm.
So, you would file the initial paperwork. So, the initial summons and petition in whatever county your home court is where you live. And then you just serve the other side. So it can be dramatic. We can get them at their office. We can get
Oh,
them at their
dang.
girlfriend's house. If you want it
Damn.
to be that way. We even caught someone one time coming off of like their private jet, and we acted like we had a delivery for them.
Oh
And
my
it was actually
gosh.
like paperwork for court. So you
I
just
love
get
it.
them served. But it also can be very calm, simple, easy. They can come pick up a copy. We can email or mail it to them and they can sign a notice. So it's based on you. You set the tone. You tell us if you want it to be dramatic or you want it to be low key. And then they have 30 days. So they have 30 days to get a lawyer, to find out if they want to get a lawyer, and then to file their response. And then anytime after that, it's kind of like we start doing disclosures, disclosing all of your assets, your debts, your income, and then trying to settle. So obviously, there's a lot of things that happen in between, especially if the other spouse doesn't know, like, hey, we're going to get divorced. But it does start off as sort of a slow process.
What do you do with your bank accounts? What do you do? Like, should you stop your paychecks from going into the joint account? Like, what do you do? Like, what?
No, but
So depends on which spouse you are. If you're the spouse that makes more money, probably you probably want to open up a separate account and you want to you know, funnel your new money because California is a community property state. So when you have a date of separation, your community has ended. So
Mhm.
anything that you
Done.
earn after that, that's your
It's
own separate
yours.
property. There's certain exceptions and things, obviously, like bonus income and things like that. But for the most part, your new earned money is your money.
What's a community
So,
property state and what's the alternative?
so I don't know what the alternative is. I guess just not a community property state where, because California is community property. So that what that means is that anything that is acquired from date of marriage to date of separation, that is community. And so that belongs to the both of you jointly and
Ah,
equally. There's certain exceptions, like if you inherit money, if you are gifted things from your family, like that type of thing. But for the most part, at the end of the day, when you go to get divorced, everything that was acquired, debt or asset, is going to be divided 50-50 between the two of you.
That did.
It can't really be like split the
oof.
baby. It's not going to be down to the penny, but we
Yeah.
try as close as we can to make sure that everyone ends up equal.
Well, so
Yeah.
what happens if you're a stay-at-home parent
Hmm.
and you haven't
So,
contributed financially to the community? Like what?
hmm
That's scary. I think a lot of women, I
it
mean, I know
is.
a couple that, I mean, that's a scary position to be in.
Yeah. So if you are that person, I mean, it is a very scary. I think it's scary for those types of women to leave. So I
Yeah.
think a lot of times they stay until their kids are older, they stay until they are older, and then they're like, I gotta get out of this. Like, this is not
Yeah.
normal. So, what I would recommend in that situation is try to get as many documents as you can before you file for divorce. Get copies of your tax returns, copies of bank statements, things that are coming in the mail, while the other spouse isn't home, because you're not going to get those things once they know that you're going to file for divorce. They're going to freeze you out. It's going to be hard. It's going to be more expensive. Try to maybe save some money because you're going to need to hire an attorney. Get a credit card that has a balance of at least five, or not a balance, but a credit limit of at least $5,000 to $10,000, so you can charge a retainer, so you can get an attorney to help you get support. And then pretty quickly, if you were our client, we would file for temporary support orders so you can get some money.
Mm,
So it's kind of
that's
like the
scary.
first steps.
That is
Very, yeah.
Yikes.
no money. Like, how do you survive? Yeah, that's
Yeah.
scary to think of.
I was always told you have to have your money on the side, like if you're a stay-at-home mom.
Hmm.
And I don't know if that impacts anything like community property wise or whatever in California, but you got to have your little oh shit money. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you got to
I mean,
have your
as long as you disclose that in your property disclosures, like if saved away $50,000 or something like that, obviously it came from the community, it's community
right.
money, but you're entitled to save that and you're entitled to use community money to pay for living expenses, to pay for attorney's fees, to pay for whatever you need in the normal course of life in a divorce case. So as
Mm,
long as you disclose it and you tell them that's there, it'll just be offset somewhere later on.
yeah.
It's when you
Well,
try to
that's
hide
good to
things
know.
that's not advisable for sure.
How often do you go from the initial filing of paperwork to divorce? Because I watch a lot of reality TV and I know
Hmm.
Dang.
they always file, everyone files, and then they never get divorced. Or they file and live together for 20 years. So how often are divorce seen all the way through in your experience?
So
Mm,
I think probably 80% of the time, maybe even 85% of the time, we do get it done. So it goes all the way from summons and petition to the judgment, and then they are divorced. Every now and then, we'll get people that have reconciled, they get back together, and we'll dismiss their case, or we'll just kind of leave it hanging to see like where it goes, because you pay these big filing fees, you pay a lot of money to get things going, and you don't want to just dismiss that and then have to repay later on.
mm.
So sometimes we'll just kind of leave it hanging. But what I do see a lot is people that get remarried to each other, even two and three times. And
Whoa,
so that's really interesting. That's
And they
very
keep coming
common.
back to get
what's
Hmm.
divorced.
wrong
And
with
they,
that?
that's expensive. That's an expensive
Yeah,
relationship.
All
it is.
Wow.
It's odd too. It's very odd to me. Like, why? I don't know. Personally, I probably wouldn't like actually get married again. You just, live together, do
Hang
your
out.
thing, especially if you're
Yeah.
older. But I
Like
guess,
why?
some
Yeah.
people it's really important to be married. So
This is inspiring me not to want to get married. So,
you just need a prenup. You just need a prenup, Mel.
and what's that?
So a premarital agreement is basically like a contract, and you enter into that with your future spouse in anticipation of getting married. And the reason that you would want to do that is A, if you want to make very clear, hey, I have these things going into marriage. You're never going to gain an interest in these things. These are always going to be mine. And that's
Mhm.
people that have family property that's been passed down. They're going to inherit businesses, things like that. Or in the alternative, if you want to change the way California law would be applied to your case, a lot of times people will use a premarital agreement to either limit spousal support or to eliminate spousal support or to eliminate interest in retirement accounts, houses, things like that. But premarital agreements, the laws are becoming more and more strict on those. So not a lot of people do those anymore. Like from lawyer perspective, they don't draft those or review those, and they're just getting very hard to enforce. So
Oh
I think it's a
yes,
good idea, but it's hard.
with the Jenny Mai and the divorce.
That's a weird thing too. Like, who's gonna, I don't know. Like, oh, will you marry me? Oh, and it's all romantic. And I guess that's part of the
Hmm.
problem because everybody's like super romantic about it. But then all of a sudden it's like, hey, sign this thing. Like,
Hmm.
especially if you're not balling, like if you're not super rich and stuff, and you're like, I'm still gonna try to freeze you out of this and this, thinking about the end, which is kind of a, in my analytical brain, that makes sense because you want to be prepared for all things, but it's also like a
Hmm.
romantic time to be like, no, you got to sign this contract
It's
first.
an it's an awkward thing.
Yeah, I don't know.
I've definitely had a few where I've prepared them or I've reviewed them and like talked to my client and been like, hey, like yes or no. And then they've just never come back. So they never actually go through with the end result. And
Mm.
most times I'm like, man, like you really should have signed that, but they just don't. And there's been some times where I've had the women where I've reviewed the prenup. So I review it, I tell them what I think, and I'm like, no, girl, you should not sign this. And they're like, oh no, I'm going to. He's going to take care of me. And I'm like, okay,
Mm-mm.
may God be with you because this is bad. This is really bad for you. But they still want to do it and they still want to get married. So I guess they're more hopeful than I am after practicing family law for 12 years.
So does it end after the judgment? I feel like this is something that could be ongoing forever. Like I've got friends who, if especially if you have children, like it's not,
Yeah.
it will not end. Like you're divorced,
Hmm.
but like you're still seeing each other in court a lot. So like what
Yeah. So
happens? Yeah, if you have
one of
kids.
my sort of like, I guess, specialties or subspecialties that I handle in my office is like custody cases. And so if you're married or you're not married, if you're going to have issues with your co-parent, you're going to have issues with them till your child is 18, unfortunately. And that creates a lot of litigation. So that can get very expensive. It can be very time consuming. And so in a normal divorce process, you would probably get some temporary custody orders pretty early on in the case. You would file a motion, we'd go to mediation, the court would make some temporary orders. At some point, depending on the age of your kids, we'd probably have like a full on trial. And the trial would decide what's in the best interest of your kids. And there used to be something called the tender years doctrine, which was like way before any of us were doing jobs and things. And it was basically like if you're the mom and you are a tender age child, or you have a tender age child, you're gonna get custody because children of that age are supposed to be with their moms. So that's been
Oh.
overturned, obviously. And now, obviously, the sort of normal is that both parents need to be with their child. And so we're not really seeing that moms get custody all the time anymore. In fact, there's a lot of dads that I have. I had a case a few years ago, and I had the father, and mom was trying to move the children away. We did probably almost 2 years of litigation in that
Oh
case.
my gosh.
And ultimately, the court changed custody, let the mom move to Oregon, but they didn't let her take the kids. And the children ended up staying with my client dad here locally. And
Hmm.
so it's not the case that mom's going to get to do whatever she wants anymore. And so that's bad for moms, good for dads.
Mm.
And it's just more equal. I mean, if there's no concern with dad's safety, anything like that, why is he's going to have as much time and as much custody rights as the court will give him?
Hmm.
So yeah, sort of a trend that's been changing. And then if you have, so custody orders are always modifiable. Whenever something changes, you can request to modify. So that is, you have a schedule change, there's a move, there's a location change. Your child maybe is having some learning issues or social issues at school, and maybe it's better for them to be in one house during the week versus going back and forth. So anytime there's a change, you can go back to court. So I think that's why people are constantly in court about custody.
Mm.
And I think a lot of times people are still emotionally attached to each other. And that's where they can sort of push the other person's button is with the kids. And that's
Yeah.
obviously sad and gross. And We
Yeah.
try not to do that, but a lot of times we obviously are on the other side where we've got to defend that. So
Yeah.
it's
Hmm.
expensive and takes a long time.
It sounds expensive. Well,
Yeah,
you
but
ready to get married?
I don't think I want to get married after hearing all of this, to be honest. I I'm happy at this age. I'm in my 40s. I might as well just date. Like, what's the benefit I'm going to get out of marriage at this age? So, speaking of that, how expensive can it get to like what's I know, and I'm not asking for, how much you make. I'm just wanting to
Sure.
know what's the least somebody can spend because I've seen people who have settled a divorce in 30 days. Like I think it was Jason Momoa or something like that.
Hmm.
How is
Ooh,
that possible? And then you have, it's dragged out over time and it becomes I know people who have spent six figures to get a divorce, spent their whole life
Oh,
saving
yeah.
for divorce.
ooh.
So we have clients that what we have, what we call uncontested divorces. And that basically means that you're going into this with an agreement on how things are going to go. Most of the time, it's people that have not been married for a long time. They probably don't have any kids, they don't own any real property. And it's just like, hey, we want to separate from each other. And so I would say usually you can get that done for $10,000 or less. Probably a little bit less if you're really like on top of your paperwork and things like that. If you have a lot of assets, you have a lot of kid issues, you have a business to divide, you're definitely probably spending over 100,000. So
Wow. Can they sell the ring? Can you sell your ring to pay for your divorce
yeah.
fee? Like part of the property? How does that work?
So if you got your ring prior to being married, that's yours. That was a gift to you, not
Yeah.
community property. If you upgraded
Hey.
during the marriage or got a new ring during the marriage, that's community property.
Oof.
Dang.
But you can, I mean, you can, if you wanted to, you could sell it and you could use that money to sort of either live off of or use for attorney's fees to move along with your divorce. You just have
Mhm.
to declare it and then it's going to be offset somewhere later on. So
Got it.
it's a good source because who wants to keep the ring at that point in time?
Yeah.
So it's a good source of funds for some people.
Mm. That's why they say, what's that saying? It's cheaper to keep her or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're like,
Yeah,
we'll just stay married. Oh my
it
gosh.
is. Yeah, it definitely is. And I think a lot of people don't realize that because a lot of men, law enforcement, firefighters, even like some teachers, like they don't understand, even though your wife stayed at home, she still has an interest in your retirement. And they're like, but she didn't work for it. Yeah, but that's not the law. And retirement division is probably the most the most easy part of the divorce because it's just so black and white. It's basically like what was put in there during the marriage by yourself, by the employer, and we're just going to split that in half and each person
That's a
goes their
lot.
own way. Yeah, and so people, mostly men, they're just super heartbroken by that, but it is what it is. So don't get married in California if you don't want to share. It's
Mm.
the
Okay.
moral of the
Dang.
story.
Mo
Yeah.
said, okay. Oh my.
Hmm. And a lot of people, women, they come in and they're like, but he cheated. He cheated. So shouldn't I get more? Well,
More.
no,
Yeah.
not in
Yeah.
California. In California, we're a no fault state. So we really can't even bring that up unless it relates to something like child custody or something like that. We can't really bring up extramarital affairs because it's just not relevant.
Can you put that in a prenup? Can there be a stipulation that if they cheat, they have to pay or something like that? Or is that not legal? I don't know how it works.
It's not enforceable in California,
Okay.
unfortunately. Yeah,
Uh,
I
oh,
know. It'd be nice though.
I love this conversation. I
I
don't
know.
want to get
I'm learning a lot.
You just need to, before you get married, Mel, decide what state is best for you and go live in that state for a while
Oh my
because the divorce
gosh.
laws, I mean, I don't know a lot. Obviously, I'm not licensed in any other state other than California, but like I've heard some things about Texas, some things about Florida. Like some of the laws over there are wild. So California, I'd say, is pretty
Those states
fair,
are
pretty
wild, you know.
simple. Yeah, true.
Some wild states.
Yeah. So California, I would say, is pretty even keel. But yeah, some of those other states are pretty interesting.
So I've seen people adopt a spouse or partner. Do you know about this
Ooh.
practice and why people would do that? Why would they adopt instead of getting married?
No, I handle adoption, but there's something called an adult adoption. I've
Mhm.
never heard of anyone doing that to their spouse, but I would guess again, I've never had this case, but I would guess it's probably because they want that person to inherit
Mm.
under them. So it has maybe more of like a probate reason behind it. But that's interesting for sure. But I do handle adoptions, and those are some of the best cases because they're just so happy. A lot of times it's step parents that are adopting, and those are really
Oh.
cool cases. They take a long time, but they're very cool.
How does that work when the step parent adopts and then they get a divorce?
Oh shoot.
Yeah, you got to be careful about who you let adopt your child. And I've actually had that too, because then you end up, sometimes I've had a case actually, it was not an adoption case, it was a custody case, but there was three parents because there was a biological parent, there was a husband who is the presumed parent because that child was born during the marriage. So I'll let you use your imaginations on how that happened. And then there was the mom. So there was actually three parents fighting for custody, and three parents I think were eventually on the birth certificate too. So yeah, it gets wild.
This is wild.
But
Yeah, it's wild. That's wild.
yeah,
Definitely.
so
I
you
remember.
definitely you definitely have to be careful and make sure you have a solid relationship before you let your spouse adopt your child, because then they get rights and they can ask for custody, they can ask for support in the event of a divorce. So
Ooh.
it gets crazy.
And
Mm-hmm.
even if they don't adopt, I remember from school, like say I meet a woman or something and we date and she has a child and I'm taking care of the child, paying for school and all this stuff, that child's relying on me for survival. At a certain point, I become responsible. I don't know if California's like that, but in some states, I become basically the parent. And then I'm responsible for paying for that child's well-being. And I've seen that. I've seen note cases on that as well. So it's scary out there.
Yeah, there's
Hey, you
so
can't even.
many different so many different things that you have to look out for in just dating in general. And then now,
Yeah.
all these things.
I think that's one of the, I mean, we've talked about this on the pod before, but like just the way people enter into relationships and they're not taking in how serious it is. I mean, everybody gets kind of swept away in the romance of it and oh, like my whole wedding aesthetic and all the things that I want to do, but they're not thinking what happens day one after the wedding is over. There's a whole ass marriage that you need to navigate. You go through some things. What is probably the silliest reason you've heard, or was there a silly reason or something that was like you're getting divorced over that kind of
I
thing? Like,
know. I was trying to think of that. I think it's mostly just cheating. And so there's a
mm,
lot of funny ways that people have found out that their spouse is cheating and things like that, and just pictures and text messages and things like that. But I think a lot of it has to do with communication.
yeah.
And
Ooh,
also a big thing is like families. And so if your family growing up is very different from your spouse's family, and you guys don't go into a marriage thinking like this is how we're going to do things, that
yeah.
causes a lot of problems, especially when like mother-in-laws are involved and sisters and things like that. It can get wild. So
Yeah.
it's definitely interesting. My favorite part of my whole job though is looking through people's bank statements. I'd love that. When I'm just looking for things in Discovery, I'm like, okay, where are you eating? Where are you shopping? Like, what are we doing? And then reading the text messages. The text messages between people are insane, insane. You get to learn a lot about people through their text messages.
Take this bar exam.
I
Shoot.
know.
Uh-huh. It's juicy. Family law is juicy. People always ask me, like, why would you do family law? And I'm like, it's so juicy. Like, you have no idea. It's the best.
In school, I did a clinic, family law clinic, and it was boring to me. I've only met with people one time, and the rest was just filing a bunch of paperwork. And so it's interesting to speak to people and see all of the things that you actually do, and the juicy parts as well.
Yes. And I mean, like, we've had people where we'll file like a motion or something and we'll say something and then they'll be like, oh, yeah, well, this is what he likes to do with his girlfriend. And they'll send pictures back about like what their sexual likes and dislikes are. And I'm like, ma'am, that was
The
not
kinks, the
needed in
kinks.
this. Yes, in this
Arby's,
response, that was not needed. You're just being messy, but I love it. I love to
Yeah.
read it.
right?
I love to see it. Yeah, you definitely get to know a lot about your clients, that's for sure.
Oh my
Yes.
gosh. That's hilarious.
Yeah,
I would love
it
that.
is fun. I think
Dang.
you would love it, Em. I
I
think you would
know.
love it.
All right, MMO, LLP. Let's go.
Uh-huh. Can you guys
Oh
have a
my.
Southern California location? Because I'll be in it. I'll be
That
in
would
it.
be hilarious.
Oh
How do
my
you, okay, so
gosh.
I always wonder in people's jobs, a lot of times, like if you're a therapist or an attorney, or if you're dealing with like criminal law, say, or something, like there's a lot of baggage you take home. Like, how do you find it mostly funny? Like, are you like, oh my gosh, this is hilarious? Or like on heavy days, like how do you decompress? Like, what do you do for self-care? Like, how do you take care of yourself
Mm.
after you've been dealing with some stuff? Or maybe something sad and like there's a kid involved and custody doesn't go the right way. Like, how do you get back to good?
So I probably have not been good at that. I've probably actually been
Yeah.
really, really bad at that. And so the last maybe, I don't know, 18 months or so have been a little rough, actually, I think,
Oh
because
no.
maybe I had a little bit of burnout and just kind of like
Mm.
not decompressing enough. But I started working out again, and that really
Yay.
helps. I
Yes.
know it's amazing how much that helps your mental health.
Yeah.
And so I started doing that again, and then it just I would say for the most part, I try really hard to do my best for my clients, and sometimes my best doesn't give them the result that they want. And we just, at the end of the day, as long as you presented all the information your client wanted you to present, it was out of your hands at that point. And the judge is going to decide. And sometimes it goes your way and sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes that's really, really sad for the child that's involved, but you just, you can't control it.
Yeah.
So,
Oof.
and I would say for the most part, I've never had a client that was ungrateful or, was, saying certain things about like, I wish it would have gotten this way, like you should have done this. Like they're mostly, I would say, grateful for the effort that you've put in. And we usually get pretty good results. I'm a pretty, I think, realistic attorney where sometimes my clients don't want to hear what I have to say, but I'm going to make sure I tell them. I
Good.
think that's one of the things that I would warn people when they're looking for an attorney. First of all, go to someone that does family law and only family law. Don't be going to someone that does like bankruptcy, criminal, family law, probate, like all of these things, because they're not experts in that area. They don't only practice that area. And so they might know a little bit. They might have done a divorce 5 years ago, but they're going to not really know how to handle your case. So I
Mhm.
would say find someone that does family law, find someone that's local. So I practice in San Bernardino, Riverside, LA County. But a
Mhm.
lot of times, sometimes San Bernardino clients, they will hire someone from LA because they want this big firm.
Yeah.
Well, that person doesn't know the judges, they don't know the local procedures.
Mm.
And a lot of the times they don't do well because they come in here asking for $1 million in attorney's fees. And that's just not the income level that we have in this county. And so the judges look at them like they're crazy. So hire someone locally, and then be careful about lawyers that are going to promise you the world. If you're telling them you want X, Y, and Z, and they're like, yep, I'm going to get it for you, I'm going to get it for you, I'm going to get it for you, that's a red flag to me because most of the time, some of your wants and needs, they're not going to be realistic, and they should tell you that because otherwise you're going to spend time and money barking up a tree that's never going to produce. And
Mhm.
so I think that that's really important. And I think I'm pretty realistic. So we tend to be successful because if the client comes in and says, I want my child to never see their father again, well, we're going to lose if we take that position. So let's take a more
Yeah.
reasonable position that addresses your actual concerns, but isn't punitive because he cheated on you?
Yeah.
So I think
Realistic
that's important.
expectations. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that
Mhm.
is.
Are there any resources for people who may be in financial, have financial difficulty, who are trying to file for divorce or who have filed for divorce and the divorce agreement is not being followed? What are resources out there for people like that?
So there are self-help centers at most courthouses. I know at least in San Bernardino County and LA County, and I think in Riverside County, they have one as well. But there's also like legal aid and things like that. I think they probably don't go to court with you, but they will certainly help you as much as they can with all of the paperwork and stuff like that. And then certain types of cases that occur in family law, if you're being charged with contempt, which is basically a violation of a court order, or if someone is trying to terminate your parental rights so that they can adopt, you are entitled to a court appointed attorney. I actually do those cases for the court, and that is at no cost to the litigant. And so when there are those types of things at mistake, the court will appoint an attorney for you, but otherwise, mostly it's just legal aid or the self-help center. I know some churches do clinics and things like that too for family law.
Oh.
But I haven't seen that often, but I have seen it, every now and then.
Hmm.
I think
Cool.
even like Chaffey College recently was having a legal clinic, so they wanted attorneys from different areas to come and try to give advice to people.
Yeah. So you really just have to find the resources. I mean, if
Yeah.
you're in that position, it's on you to kind of find the resources. Awesome.
Yeah. And a lot of times people will really just have to borrow money from friends and family to hire someone because they don't have it. And especially with the way economically everyone is today, with things being so expensive,
Yeah.
it's hard for people to hire attorneys and it's not cheap at all. So
Yeah.
we try to, do as much as we can for what you can afford. And that's, I think, another way to provide realistic expectations is what's your budget and what's your main goals and what can we do to accomplish some of those big things, but maybe let go of like the little things.
Yeah.
That's fair. Any final thoughts?
So I wanted to tell you guys about very quickly domestic violence. It's a big issue in California in divorce cases. And obviously, domestic violence can be physical violence, threats of physical violence. Those are the things we kind of all know about. But I wanted to also draw attention to the fact that it's now defined as anything that destroys the emotional peace and calm of the other party. So disturbing their peace.
That's a lot.
Yes. So things that we may do when we're married, when we're in a relationship, looking at the Ring camera, checking on what our spouse is doing, seeing what they're watching on Netflix, or looking through their phone, anything like that. Once you start to decide you're not going to be together and you're going to get divorced, those things are not acceptable and they're actually domestic violence. So I feel like a lot of people don't realize that domestic violence in California has such a broad definition. And so I definitely think you should have a conversation with your attorney at the beginning, how to protect yourself against a restraining order, because it's a very low burden in California. And it sort of gives you a tactical advantage against the other party with respect to support and with respect to custody. So unfortunately, a lot of people will file those with bad intentions. So that's something I bring up with my clients right away is, hey, don't do these things, because while they may have been normal when you were married or semi-normal, they're not now. So you need to stop.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah.
Well, that actually brought up another question that I wanted to ask. You said domestic violence. Is there, like, as far as abuse is concerned, like financial abuse? And I think that that's an issue I've heard, among the little chit chat or whatever. But just in the situation, if you are a stay-at-home mom and you don't have access to money, or you're being limited, or you're being controlled as far as like you don't have credit cards, you don't have any financial ability to do anything. What happens in those circumstances if somebody comes to you and they're like, well, I don't have access to the bank account. He takes my credit cards or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, what is that?
So financial abuse can be considered abuse for purposes of a domestic violence restraining order. That's really sort of grown in the past couple of years in that sort of niche of manipulative and controlling behavior. So controlling finances, controlling where your spouse is going, controlling who comes over to the house, where if they see their family, all that is obviously emotional abuse. And you can get a restraining order against someone, and in that restraining order you can get a support order very quickly. And so that would essentially get you money in the interim time, or get you access to funds, so that they can't freeze you out, essentially, because a lot of times that financial abuse will continue throughout the divorce, so that you basically just give up and say, take whatever you want, I am going to give up whatever my rights are because I just can't deal with you anymore. So it's sad, but it happens a lot. It definitely happens a lot. So I think just be smart about it, trust your gut. And if something doesn't feel right, it's probably not right. And you need to, I think the best thing you can do for yourself is at least consult with an attorney. That's my new life motto and everything. If I don't know about it, before I'm going to even mess with it, like taxes, anything, we're going to consult with someone that knows, because that's their job.
Right.
So getting a consult, I think, is your best bang for your buck.
I hope to never know about this.
I hope so too. I hope so too.
I never know about this, so I don't hope to it. Really appreciate you coming on, Kelly. This was
yes.
I hope I gave some. useful information and wasn't boring
Oh,
for you guys.
no, this was
I was like,
gold.
man, family law can be boring. So I was hoping that'd be interesting.
No,
Yeah,
this
you
is,
actually got me considering going into family law. So I
Get
need
it,
to
girl?
do that. May network.
yeah,
I'll add you on LinkedIn.
yeah.
Yes. Well, it
Just for
was
those
very
text
fun.
messages. That's all. I just want to look at people's text messages.
Yeah, reality TV. We have real reality.
Right?
I'm telling you, it's juicy. It's definitely juicy.
I
Well,
love it.
thanks for having me, ladies. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was good to
Thanks
see
so
you.
much.
Thank
Enjoy
you.
your
Good to
Thank
see
you
you
so
conversation.
too.
much.
No
All
All
problem.
right.
I'll
right.
talk to you guys soon.
Take
Okay,
care.
take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.